Welcome back to One on One, New York's longest running sports call-in show. Michael Calamari here with Brian Rabacs, and we are now joined by LaChina Robinson, college basketball analyst and reporter, also WNBA broadcaster and co-host of Around the Rim show on ESPN. LaChina, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you guys for having me. Really cool to be here with you.
Yeah, it's so great to have you, and I guess we want to just start off in the basketball world, probably the biggest story right now with the NBA Finals wrapping up. As a basketball analyst yourself, what did you see that gave Golden State the edge?
Oh, man. I would say experience for sure, right? The NBA Finals is such a big stage, and the momentum shifts can be very large and sweeping. And I think it can be difficult to hold on to your confidence and your focus throughout such an intense series. But because Golden State had been there, done that, we saw some moments in the entire playoffs, I would say, where it was like, oh no, Golden State's they're not going to be able to do this again. Either it's Draymond's not effective, or they don't have enough depth. Whatever those questions may have been along the way, and Boston faced those same moments, but Golden State just had the experience of, okay, we know how to bounce back from this. We know how to regain our confidence. We have faith and comfort in this system, and we know that it works and it's proven. So to me, I thought really it was experience, and not to take anything away from how special Golden State is as an offensive team and their shooting ability and how incredible Steph Curry is. Andrew Wiggins really, wow, did he pop off of the scene? But I think when it came down to it was definitely their experience in those situations that gave them an edge.
LaChina, I saw you posted a picture with Steph Curry on your Twitter after the Warriors won as a way to congratulate him and the Warriors on another title. And a lot of fans and media have had this conversation about Curry's legacy and what he has to prove. But after winning his fourth Finals and another Finals MVP, there's nothing more Curry has to do to prove in terms of his legacy, right?
No, not at all. I mean, he's got the 3-point record now. He's got the Finals MVP. I think I saw a note somewhere that only Kobe Bryant had played more minutes or games, I can't remember which, as a significant piece of a NBA Finals team and not won that Finals MVP. So he now has everything really that he could have asked to accomplish. And so now, I mean, honestly, he's not this kind of guy, but he can kind of just ride out the rest of his career without a lot of pressure. I do think there was some pressure on him. I don't know what you guys felt, but I think he had to win one more, and to be able to do it apart from KD, to be the person in the final stretch. And he did that. So, I mean, he's special. Nothing else to prove in my eyes.
Interested to see, what you think of this. Now the talk after the Warriors win almost immediately is, can they repeat? And you mentioned the pressure that he needed to win one without Kevin Durant. Now that he's got that, the pressure might be off him now. Do you think the Warriors are the clear-cut favorites maybe for next season's championship?
I don't ever think there are any clear-cut favorites in the NBA for a championship, especially with the emergence of some of the teams that we saw, make deep runs. I mean, how can you not be excited about Dallas, right? Will Chris Paul get this championship before the window closes? What will the Celtics look like with another year under their belt, together under new leadership, new head coach? And then there's kind of like the Miamis of the world trickling in, the Memphis Grizzlies, if Ja had stayed healthy. So I never say there's never a clear-cut favorite to me in the NBA. And that's without all the roster movement that we know we will see in the offseason. And I also just really think that, quite honestly, the Warriors kind of limped into this championship, right? Like it was kind of questionable. It was a little shaky, whether it was Draymond not being healthy all season, Clay trying to get healthy, but we know that, he's got an injury history now. So it's not like, hey, we just retool and keep this thing going. Like, they've got some bandages, as far as some of the personnel as they get older from, that young Warrior squad that won their first many years ago. So every year is different. but I was definitely impressed that they were able to find the mental and physical fortitude to push through the finish line for this one.
So we saw the Warriors win the NBA Finals the other night, and we obviously know you're heavily involved with the WNBA and women's basketball as a whole. So when we look at the WNBA season and how it's progressing along as the season goes, do you have a team you're looking at to kind of take home the WNBA crown at the end of the season? Do you have a WNBA Finals favorite as of right now?
Well, I think there's a group at the top that has kind of started to separate themselves, and this season has been tough, quite honestly, to really make predictions because there have been some late arrivals from overseas. There have been some impactful injuries. I mean, every storyline you could imagine that affects a roster's personnel has happened so far in the WNBA. COVID has been a problem early. So it's hard because you're not really seeing teams from the jump at full tilt. And that's the difference between the NBA and the WNBA. You know, once NBA training camp starts, everyone's there, they're locked in, they're working on their system, they're working on roles and getting their chemistry together. Not the same for the WNBA. I mean, there were a couple of international leagues that we're still going a month into the season. So now that everyone's back, there's starting to be some separation. And I would say those top teams are Las Vegas Aces for sure. Becky Hammond has come in and done an outstanding job in her first season with the Aces of kind of retooling them on both ends of the floor. And Asia Wilson is candidate for MVP and defensive MVP at this point, leading the way. And then there's the Connecticut Sun, with the reigning MVP, Jonquel Jones. I would also say Chicago. Chicago definitely has an opportunity to repeat. And I think the biggest thing for them is their depth is incredible. I mean, they bring in Emma Mieseman in the offseason, who was a finals MVP at Washington. They've added a young woman by the name of Rebecca Gardner, who is 31 years old in her first season in the WNBA, but has had a great career overseas and really gives them a boost at the wing position offensively and defensively. James Wade just did an excellent job as a GM in the offseason, keeping the team together, but also growing that roster and making it better. Washington is always in the mix. You know, Elena Deladon is back, you know, with the back injury now healed, but she's still not able to play every night. So that could end up being a deciding factor in how that team kind of progresses through the season is how healthy she is and how often she's able to play. So those are just a few teams off the top of my head, but it's definitely a season where I don't think we know what's going to happen because of just the some of the storylines that will continue to unfold as the season goes on.
As a New York radio station, you know, we've been watching the New York Liberty, a very slow start, 1-7, but they've started to turn around. What do you see that's missing from this team, and how can they get consistent to where, you know, they're a team that's looking to get into the playoffs?
Yeah, I mean, it's tough, right? Because there are a few different things happening in New York. A new head coach is Sandy Brondello, you know, and that's another, I would say, storyline overall in the WNBA is we've got some new coaches of different teams, and it takes time. It's a short season for the WNBA, 36 games versus, like I said, when you look like the NBA, they've got 80-something games. So you could hit your stride, you know, 75% of the way into the season, you've already played more games than WNBA does in their whole year. So there's not a lot of time in a 3-month season, pretty much 3.5 months to, get that chemistry and get all your pieces in place. So new head coach, that's part of it. And then just a young team and not, yes, young in terms of experience, but also just young in terms of time played together. A lot of new pieces on the roster, some that are injured even now. I mean, but not having Benijah Laney has been big. Dee Dee Richards is just making her way back. I mean, you know, everyone's been hit by injury, but I think on a team where you have a smaller margin for error, it can really be impactful. So they just got Maureen Johannes back. I think she is a huge piece of their success, and you didn't even realize it was missing until she hit the floor. But Sabrina Ionescu is having an outstanding season, and so that is always gives you hope with her leadership and her competitiveness leading the way. you're going to give yourself a chance. And Natasha Howard, as we know, has also been a brilliant player in this league. So those two players, I think, are kind of the anchors. But, you bring in Stephanie Dolson, trying to figure out how to best utilize her in the system. Honshu has been an amazing surprise. So it's just a work in progress, I would say, for the Liberty. But what we are seeing in recent weeks since that 1-7 start is just a team that's spacing the floor, that's passing better, that's starting to get to know each other as teammates, where you like the ball, where can you get shots in these offensive sets, being more connected on the defensive end with every game that they play. So definitely headed in the right direction. I mean, tough loss to Chicago and the waiting moments of that one. A more veteran, experienced Washington team got the best of them the other night. But I think Seattle tomorrow will be a great test and one that people will want to tune in and watch.
A big headline that, we've seen Sabrina Ionescu come back and kind of resurge for the Liberty. What have you seen out of her lately that's made her so great?
Everything that we knew Sabrina was, she came into the league and right away was hit with an injury, and that's hard. In particular, because I think if there were questions about Sabrina coming in, it was more about her physical attributes. Is she quick enough? Is she agile enough? Her mobility, defensively, is she enough of an athlete to have an impact on WNBA? Because that's where the separation is between college and the W, in my opinion, is what can you do physically, your length, your wingspan, your size, your quickness. This league is so strong, so big, so athletic. And so to take a hit injury wise that she really, I don't feel like has recovered from until this year, we're just seeing her healthy. And being able to appreciate all of the different aspects of the game that Sabrina impacts, from scoring to rebounding to incredible passer, which is why, the triple doubles have come so frequently for her as a young player. She just can do multiple things on the basketball court, and in pick and roll situations, she's excellent. As kind of the primary offense of the WNBA and pocket passing and, making sure her teammates stay involved. But also, I mean, you guys seen her. She's hit some deep threes. There's no limits to her range. And she just has so much confidence in what she can do between the lines. And for a young player in this league, that's everything.
WNBA as a whole, I think this past week, probably the biggest story was Sue Bird announcing on Thursday that she would be retiring at the end of the season. Looking at her entire career and just, how much she's meant for, women's basketball, the sport as a whole, the WNBA, what's her lasting legacy and what's her, influence on the WNBA?
Man, we could talk all day about this. I don't even know if you can put it into words what Sue Bird has meant to the WNBA. First and foremost, you have to just acknowledge that she is one of, if not the greatest point guard to ever play in this league. And she's number one in assists right now. So it's hard to say she's not, but I know there are the Tisha Penicheiros of the world and the Lindsay Whalens. But I think when people think about women's basketball point guard, Sue is the first name that comes to mind. And the thing about Sue is she just has this way of approaching everything in life the way she approaches being a point guard. I am going to make everyone around me feel good, be empowered, to be at their best, to feel special. Anytime you've been in her presence, you know that Sue is such a great listener, very thoughtful, fun, just has this magnetic personality that draws you into who she is as a person, but also obviously so much respect for what she does between the lines. But I think ultimately, what her legacy should be is excellence on the court, an ambassador for the game off of the court, but also the level of sacrifice that Sue has put in. I mean, let's talk about, the pay equity issue within the WNBA and how, these women have not gotten paid over time what they should to do their jobs and to be the best at what they do. Now, Sue did get to go overseas to Russia, and she'll be the first to tell you the money she made over there has been was amazing and is everything as to where she is in terms of her financial stability today. But when you think about the number of things that Sue has done as an ambassador for this league for free, the community appearances, the interviews, being a spokesperson, always being on, she's been the face of the WNBA in a lot of ways. And so that we could never repay her for, because the amount of trust that the sports community has in the name Sue Bird is not easy to maintain, to be consistent in who she's been. I just think that people trust the WNBA because they trust Sue Bird. And I really believe that that will be her legacy.
A little bit about your career for a second. You were an athlete yourself, women's basketball player, 4-year starter at Wake Forest for their women's basketball team, and then obviously stayed within the game, altering to the sports media field. So I want to ask, what was the transition from player to broadcaster like?
Well, my first career was in athletic administration. I left college wanting to stay close to sport, but I didn't want to coach. So I figured I'd be an athletics director. I wasn't very smart back then. I'm just kidding. So I started my career in athletic administration, wanted to be an AD, worked at Georgia Tech for 7 years. And then when I was in my late 20s, kind of had a little bit of a quarter life crisis. I still loved my job at Georgia Tech and could see myself being an administrator. I was always passionate about the student athlete development side of an athlete's time in college. So their character development, their career development, their community development. But I kind of just felt a pull to do something else. And it wasn't a plan at all. But one day I was asked to do the radio for the team. So I did. I put the headset on and I'm sitting there and I'm talking about the game and I'm courtside and I'm like, wow, this is what I need to be doing. Like the first time I put on a headset, I knew that's what I wanted to do. And from there, I was a sociology major. I wasn't a communications major, didn't take broadcasting, any of that. And so I was showing up at these networks like, hey, I want to call women's basketball game. And they were looking at me like, really? You have no experience. You have no schooling in this. Like, what makes you think you can do this? And to be honest, I just worked my butt off, doing a lot of volunteering, doing a lot of free work, getting whatever on camera experience I could, no matter how big or small the event, creating even my own opportunities sometimes to get reps and find that comfort on camera, shadowing, anyone that came in town to call a basketball game, all of the things. Just becoming a student of the game, becoming a sponge, and just having a great network and supportive mentors along the way. I eventually found my way. You know how it is. Someone gets sick and they call you and say, hey, can you fill in and do this game? And you're like, sure. And all of a sudden you've got a piece of footage for your reel. And that just continued to build. So I'm just really, really grateful for this journey of finding my space in sport media and in the world of women's basketball, because the game has given so much to me. So it's amazing that I get to sit in a chair and magnify and amplify everything that this sport is doing and everything that is meant to me over time. So that's kind of how things happened for me.
Wake Forest, staying in the game of women's basketball, how have you seen it change, and what do you think the biggest difference is from when you were a player to now, present day?
Yeah, the game has grown a lot. I would say the on-court product is better than we've ever seen it. And some of the things I mentioned to you guys earlier, like the game is so good. And it has everything to do with the level of athlete, the versatility of the game. Again, I think it's kind of the downside of what WNBA players have to experience is they have to go overseas to make more money. But what that does for them on court is, every player in the league kind of becomes a go-to player overseas, and they develop and they have to play multiple positions. And so we're seeing a very high skill level, a very versatile game. The coaching is better than it's ever been. So just the court itself, like the product itself, is number one. But then also, I believe that the emergence of social media has had a really positive impact on not just women's basketball, but also women's sports in general. These women get to take control of their own messages. They get to tell their own stories, using those platforms to allow fans to get to know them as more than basketball players. I mean, there was a time where they had to wait for someone to come and interview them or want to get interested in women's basketball to come interview them to tell their stories and to document the accomplishments of the game. But now they're able to take that into their own hands. And those vehicles have led to the eyes opening of more media entities and more people saying, hey, we need to pay attention to these women. And so I also think that just the growth of the game, the exposure, the visibility, technology has helped because now streaming games is something that, has helped just in terms of the accessibility of women's basketball. So those are just a few areas, but more than anything, if you have not actually watched a WNBA game in person, you need to do that because I think you'd be blown away by the speed of the game and the skill of these women. It's beyond impressive.
Yeah, one more question before we let you go. Once again, we're talking to LaChina Robinson on 90.7 FM and YouTube Live for One-on-One. I want to talk about this Rising Media Stars program that you co-founded, an organization looking at diversify the sports media broadcasting industry. What's the journey been like since founding that program in 2016 and to see where it is now?
It's been a journey. It's just exactly what you said. I'd never founded a nonprofit. So there's so much learning to do from the programming itself to putting a board together to raising money. There's just so many moving pieces. And, I started the program because I spoke a little bit about my transition into broadcasting earlier, but I wanted there to be a better bridge for young women. And in particular, this program is for women of color to find their way to get that first opportunity. And to me, the most valuable thing we provide is that they actually get to cover games. We have a partnership with 4 professional sports leagues here in Atlanta, the Braves, United, the Dream, and the Falcons. The United, the Dream, the Falcons, and the Hawks. And they actually do halftime stand-ups and do game introductions and get to go into the press room and go into the locker rooms. And so when a company calls and says, hey, can we take a look at your reel? They actually have footage of them covering games. And so that to me is the most valuable aspect of it. But it's also about the mentoring, the connecting. We hope that these young women go on and support each other, which we have found that they do. They're creating kind of their own safe space, in a very competitive field. But really, we started it because we want to diversify the face of sports broadcasting. We want to see more Black women covering sport. And we hope that at some point, Rising Media Stars will become a pipeline, where networks can come when they're looking to find diverse candidates and that we would have some of the best that there is to offer.
College basketball analyst and reporter, also WNBA broadcaster. Be sure to check out her show Around the Rim on ESPN, YouTube, LaChina. Thanks so much for taking that time of your day to join us.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you guys having me. And Fordham's finest, are we talking about my guy Ruco or what?
Ruco is one of the alumni here at WFUV. That is correct.
I know. I love Ryan. Let me tell you guys, he is one of the best people I've ever met in my life. I mean, yes, he's an outstanding commentator. We're all going to be looking back saying, I know that guy, and wanting to just establish our connection with him and tell people that we know him. But working beside him has been such an honor over the years, the way he cares for the WNBA and how intentional he is about connecting with people and making everyone feel appreciated. To me, that is one of the best things about Ryan is he makes everyone feel special and valued. But anyway, I couldn't leave this conversation without giving him some love because he's the best, but I'm sure you guys already know that.
Ryan Ruco is the best. He's awesome. Thank you so much for joining us, LaChina, and thank you for your great input on the WNBA. It was awesome.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate you having me. Have a good weekend.